In 2026, something is about to change in the car world that almost no one expected, and even the biggest luxury brands could not stop it. Companies like Bugatti, Lamborghini, Ferrari, and Rolls-Royce are known for having full control over their cars, especially when it comes to repairs and parts. For many years, if you own one of these cars, you could not simply go to any mechanic to fix it. You had to go through their official dealer network, and that often meant very high costs, long waiting times, and strict rules. But now, a new law in Europe is about to change all of that. This law will force car manufacturers to sell their original parts to independent repair shops, not just their authorized dealers. That means a skilled mechanic working in a normal workshop could legally access the same parts that were once locked inside factory systems. This idea was once seen as impossible, especially in the world of hypercars like Bugatti, where everything is tightly controlled. These companies spent millions trying to stop this law from happening. They hired legal teams, they lobbied governments, and they argued that allowing independent repairs could be dangerous. But despite all their efforts, they lost. The law was passed, and by 2026, it will be fully active across Europe. This change is not just about saving money on repairs. It is about control. For decades, car companies controlled who could fix their cars, what parts could be used, and how repairs were done. Now, that control is being challenged. The most interesting part is that this law did not come out of nowhere. It was influenced by real situations, real problems, and real people. One of the biggest examples that helped shape this debate was a famous car rebuild story on YouTube. A man bought a completely wrecked Bugatti Chiron, a car that most people believe could never be repaired outside the factory. When he tried to fix it, he faced a major problem. He could not get the parts he needed, even though he was willing to pay for them. The company simply refused to sell them to him. This raised a big question. If you own a car, should you not have a right to repair it? This question became the center of a much larger debate across Europe and beyond. Governments, lawmakers, and consumer groups started looking closely at how companies were controlling repairs. They realized that this was not just about luxury cars. The same issue existed in normal vehicles, home appliances, and even smartphones. The idea that companies could block access to parts and repairs was becoming harder to justify. This is why the new law is so important. It is not just about Bugatti or Ferrari. It is about changing the balance of power between companies and customers. For the first time, the law is clearly saying that if you own something, you should have the right to fix it. And that simple idea is now shaking one of the most exclusive industries in the world. To truly understand why this law became so important, you need to look at one story that captured the attention of millions of people around the world. This was not a story told in courtrooms or government meetings. It happened on YouTube, where a car builder named Matt Armstrong took on a challenge that most experts believed was impossible. He bought a completely wrecked Bugatti Chiron, one of the most advanced and expensive cars ever made. This was not just any damaged car. It was written off, meaning insurance companies had already decided it was beyond repair. In simple terms, it was considered scrap. Even people inside the car industry believed that a car like this could only be repaired by the original manufacturer, Bugatti, and only at their factory with their tools and engineers. But Matt decided to prove them wrong. He wanted to rebuild the car step by step and show the entire process to the world. At first, everything seemed like a normal rebuild project, just on a much bigger and more expensive scale. But very quickly, he ran into a serious problem that would change everything. He needed original parts to fix the car properly. These were not optional parts. Without them, the car simply could not be rebuilt. So he tried to buy them, just like any car owner would. But this is where things took a dramatic turn. Bugatti refused to sell him the parts. It was not about money. He was ready to pay whatever it cost. The parts existed, and they were being used in official repair centers. But because he was not part of Bugatti's approved network, he was denied access. This created a situation that many people found hard to believe. How can someone own a car but not be allowed to buy the parts needed to fix it? This question quickly spread across online communities, car forums, and social media platforms. Millions of people started watching his videos, not just for entertainment, but to see how far the situation would go. His rebuild turned into a real-life example of a much bigger problem. It showed how powerful these companies were when it came to controlling repairs. It also showed how limited independent mechanics were, even if they had the skills and knowledge to do the job. As the story continued, Matt had to find creative ways to solve problems that should not have existed in the first place. Instead of simply ordering parts, he had to search globally, rely on second-hand components, or sometimes even redesign solutions himself. This made the project much harder, slower, and more expensive. But at the same time, it made the story even more powerful. People were no longer just watching a car rebuild. They were watching a fight between an individual and a system. This is exactly the kind of story that gets attention. And it did. Lawmakers, consumer groups, and industry experts began to notice. They saw this as a clear example of why change was needed. It was no longer just a theoretical problem discussed in meetings. It was happening in real life, in front of millions of viewers. And that is what gave the argument for repair rights real strength. This single project helped turn a technical issue into a public debate, and that debate played a major role in pushing the new law forward. When this new repair law started gaining attention, it was not just a small disagreement between a few companies and lawmakers. It quickly turned into a major battle across the entire automotive industry. Big manufacturers like Bugatti, Ferrari, Lamborghini, and Rolls-Royce motor cars, along with many other brands, joined forces to try and stop this law. They spent millions on lobbying, hired legal experts, and worked through industry groups to influence governments. On the surface, their main argument was about safety. They claimed that modern cars, especially high-performance vehicles, are extremely complex machines. According to them, allowing independent mechanics to repair these cars without direct factory control could lead to serious risks. For example, a car like a Bugatti Chiron operates at speeds and performance levels that most vehicles never reach. Its braking system, cooling system, and engine setup are highly advanced. The companies argued that even a small mistake during repair could cause major problems, not just for the driver, but for others on the road as well. This argument sounds reasonable at first, and to some extent, it is true that these cars are complex. However, critics of this argument pointed out something very important. The law does not say that anyone can repair any car without proper knowledge. It clearly states that qualified independent repairers should have access to parts and information. In simple words, skilled professionals who have the right training and tools should not be blocked just because they are not part of an official network. This difference is very important, and it is where many manufacturers try to create confusion. Another major argument used by car companies was about intellectual property. Brands like Bugatti invest huge amounts of money into research, design, and engineering. They claim that forcing them to supply parts and technical information could expose their secrets to competitors. From their point of view, their cars are not just products, they are the result of years of innovation and unique engineering solutions. But lawmakers responded to this by making a clear distinction. The law does not require companies to reveal how their parts are made. It only requires them to sell the parts themselves and provide enough information for safe repairs. In other words, giving someone a finished part is not the same as giving them the blueprint to create it. This helped weaken the intellectual property argument significantly. The third major concern raised by manufacturers was about quality control. They argued that if parts are sold outside their official network, they cannot guarantee how those parts will be used. They also warned that independent repair shops might use cheaper or unsafe alternatives, which could damage the car and harm the brand's reputation. But again, the law directly addresses this issue. It specifically says that independent repairers must have access to genuine parts, the same ones used by authorized dealers. This means the quality remains exactly the same. If a part is safe when installed by a dealer, it should also be safe when installed by a qualified independent mechanic. This argument, like the others, started to lose strength as the details of the law became clearer to eye in reality. Many experts believe that the real reason behind this strong opposition was not just safety, intellectual property, or quality. It was control and money. The repair market is a huge source of profit for car manufacturers. When customers are forced to go through official service centers, companies can charge higher prices for both parts and labor. By limiting access to parts, they effectively remove competition. Independent repair shops cannot compete if they cannot get the same parts. This creates a closed system where the manufacturer controls everything. The new law threatens this system completely. It opens the market, increases competition, and gives customers more choices. That is why companies fought so hard against it. It was not just about changing a rule. It was about changing an entire business model that had existed for decades. And despite all their efforts, they could not stop it. Now that we understand the story and the resistance from car companies, it is important to clearly explain what this new law actually says in simple words. The law is often called the Right to Repair Directive, and it was passed by the European Union to make sure that customers and independent repairers are treated fairly. At its core, the law focuses on three main ideas, and each one directly targets the ways manufacturers have controlled repairs for years. The first part is a repair obligation. This means that companies like Bugatti, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz cannot simply refuse to repair a product anymore if the customer wants it fixed. In the past, some companies would make repairs so expensive or complicated that customers felt forced to buy a new product instead. This law stops that behavior. It clearly says that if a product can be repaired, the manufacturer must offer the repair at a reasonable cost and within a reasonable time. They cannot use tricks like software locks or special tools to make independent repair impossible. This is a very big change because modern cars rely heavily on software. Without access to that software, even simple repairs can become impossible. The second part of the law is the spare parts obligation, and this is where things become even more important. Under this rule, manufacturers must provide spare parts, tools, and technical information not only to their official dealers, but also to independent repair shops. This means that a skilled mechanic working outside the official network can now legally access the same parts that were once restricted. For example, if someone owns a high-performance car from Audi or Porsche, they will no longer be forced to rely only on expensive dealership services. Independent specialists can offer the same repairs using genuine parts. The law also says that companies cannot use pricing as a way to block access. In the past, some manufacturers would sell parts to dealers at lower prices, but charge much higher prices to independent buyers. This made it impossible for independent repairers to compete. Now, pricing must be fair and non-discriminatory, which means everyone gets a fair chance. The third part of the law is what many experts consider the most powerful. It focuses on preventing manufacturers from blocking repairs through design or policy decisions. Companies cannot design products in a way that makes repair unnecessarily difficult. For example, they cannot use special connectors, glue parts together in ways that prevent removal, or create systems that only work with factory-approved components. They also cannot refuse to repair a product just because it was previously fixed by an independent mechanic. This is a huge shift. In the past, if a car was touched by someone outside the official network, the manufacturer could refuse to work on it in the future. That effectively locked the owner out of the system forever. Now, that is no longer allowed. If the car can be safely repaired, the manufacturer must consider it, regardless of its repair history. What makes this law so powerful is that it does not just suggest good behavior, it enforces it. Companies are legally required to follow these rules, and there are systems in place to make sure they do. Consumer groups, repair organizations, and even governments can take action if a company tries to avoid compliance. This means manufacturers cannot simply pretend to follow the law while quietly continuing old practices. They will be monitored, and they can face penalties if they break the rules. In simple terms, this law shifts power from manufacturers back to customers and repair professionals. It creates a more open and competitive market where people have real choices. Instead of being forced into one system, car owners can decide where and how they want their vehicles repaired. And that is why this law is being called one of the biggest changes in the automotive world in recent years. Now let's move away from laws and companies for a moment and focus on something more important. What this actually means for everyday people. Because at the end of the day, this law is not just about big brands like Bugatti or high-end hypercars. It is about millions of car owners across Europe who deal with repair costs, delays, and limited choices every single year. For a long time, if your car needed repair, especially if it was a newer or more advanced model, you were often forced to go to an official dealership. These dealerships usually charge higher prices for both parts and labor. In many cases, customers did not have a real choice. Independent mechanics either did not have access to the necessary parts or lacked the software tools required to complete the repair. This created a system where the manufacturer had almost total control over the repair process. With the new law coming into effect, that situation begins to change in a very real and practical way. Imagine you own a car from BMW or Volkswagen and something goes wrong. Instead of booking an appointment weeks in advance at an expensive dealership, you could take your car to a trusted local mechanic. That mechanic, if qualified, will now be able to order genuine parts directly and access the technical information needed to fix the problem correctly. This means faster service, lower costs, and more convenience. It also means that smaller repair businesses can compete fairly with large dealership networks, which is good for the economy as well. More competition usually leads to better prices and better service for customers. Another big advantage is transparency. In the past, many car owners felt confused or even trapped when dealing with repairs. They were told that only the dealership could fix certain issues, and they had no way to verify if that was true. Now, with more repair options available, customers can compare prices and services more easily. If one shop offers repair at a high price, another shop might offer the same service for less using the same genuine parts. This creates a healthier and more open market. It also builds trust because customers feel they are making informed decisions instead of being forced into one option. This law also has a strong impact on long-term ownership. Many people avoid buying used cars, especially high-end or older models, because they are worried about repair costs. If only official dealerships can repair a car, and those repairs are expensive, the cost of ownership becomes too high. But when independent repairers can access parts and tools, maintaining a car becomes more affordable. This can make used cars more attractive and extend the lifespan of vehicles. Instead of replacing a car every few years, people might choose to keep and repair their existing vehicles. This is not only good for their wallets, but also better for the environment, as it reduces waste and the need for new production. For owners of luxury and performance cars, the impact is even more significant. If someone owns a car from Porsche or Audi, they often face very high repair costs at official service centers. Independent specialists already exist for these brands, but their work has been limited by access restrictions. With the new law, these specialists can operate more freely and offer high-quality repairs at competitive prices. This could completely change the experience of owning a premium car. Instead of feeling locked into an expensive system, owners will have more freedom and control. In simple terms, this law is about giving power back to the people who actually own the cars. It removes unnecessary barriers, encourages fair competition, and makes repairs more accessible. While it may seem like a technical or legal change, its real impact will be felt in everyday situations. When a car breaks down, when a repair bill arrives, or when someone decides whether they can afford to keep their vehicle. And in all of these situations, the new law has the potential to make things easier, fairer, and more affordable for everyone. While this new repair law is already a big change to traditional cars, it becomes even more important when we look at the future of the automotive industry, especially electric vehicles. The world is slowly moving away from petrol and diesel cars and shifting toward electric cars, and this transition is happening faster than many people expected. Companies like Tesla, Porsche, and Audi are investing heavily in electric technology. But with this new technology comes a new kind of problem, and in many ways, it is even more serious than what we saw with traditional cars. Electric vehicles are not just mechanical machines. They are highly dependent on software, electronics, and complex battery systems. The most expensive part of an electric car is a battery pack, and replacing it can cost a huge amount of money. In some cases, battery replacement can cost between £10,000 and £25,000, or even more for high-performance vehicles. For many car owners, this is a massive expense, sometimes even higher than the value of the car itself. Because of this, repair becomes extremely important. Instead of replacing an entire battery pack, it is often more practical to repair or replace only the damaged part. But here is where the problem begins. Most electric car manufacturers have designed their systems in a way that makes independent repair very difficult. For example, if a small part of the battery is damaged, a skilled technician might be able to fix it by replacing just one module. However, the car's software system known as the battery management system, controls how the battery works. Without access to the system, even a perfectly repaired battery might not function properly. The car might refuse to start, or it might show error messages that cannot be cleared without factory authorization. This means that even if the physical repair is possible, the software can block it. This is very similar to what happened in the case of Matt Armstrong, when he tried to rebuild a high-tech car and faced software-related limitations along with parts restrictions. This is exactly why the new repair law is so important at this moment in time. It does not just focus on physical parts like engines or brakes. It also includes access to software tools and technical information. This means that independent repairers should be able to legally access the systems needed to complete repairs on electric vehicles. Without this access, the entire idea of fair repair becomes meaningless in the modern automotive world. Lawmakers understood this risk and acted before the problem became too big. They saw that if manufacturers were allowed to fully control software access, they could create a new kind of monopoly, even stronger than the one that existed with traditional cars. Another important point is the design of electric vehicles themselves. Many companies are now building batteries and components in ways that make them harder to repair. For example, some battery packs are sealed or glued together, making it very difficult to open them without causing damage. The new law addresses this issue by encouraging designs that allow easier repair and replacement of individual parts. This does not mean companies cannot innovate, but it means they cannot intentionally design products in a way that blocks repair completely. This is a major step forward because it pushes the industry toward more sustainable and practical solutions. The timing of this law is also very important. If it had come later, after electric vehicles had fully taken over the market, it would have been much harder to change the system. By introducing these rules now, governments are setting clear expectations for the future. Manufacturers know that they cannot build closed systems that lock out independent repairers. They must design their products in a way that allows fair access. This creates a better balance between innovation and customer rights. In simple terms, electric cars represent the future of transportation, but they also bring new challenges. Without proper regulation, these challenges could limit repair options even more than before. The new law acts as a safeguard, making sure that as technology evolves, customer rights are protected. It ensures that even in a world of advanced software and complex systems, car owners still have the basic right to repair what they own. And that makes this law not just important for today, but essential for the future of the automotive industry. As this new repair law moves closer to full implementation in 2026, it is becoming clear that the automotive industry will not stay the same. This is not a small adjustment or a minor rule change. It is a shift that could reshape how car companies operate, how they design their vehicles, and how they interact with customers. For brands like Bugatti, Ferrari, and Lamborghini, the challenge is not just about following the law. It is about adapting to a new reality where they no longer have full control over the repair ecosystem. For decades, these companies built their business models around exclusivity. Everything from buying the car to maintaining it was tightly controlled. Now, they must find a way to operate in a more open system without losing their brand identity. One of the most likely changes we will see is how manufacturers handle compliance. On paper, companies will follow the law. They will make parts available, provide technical information, and allow independent repairers to access what they need. But in practice, things may not be that simple. Some manufacturers might try to create complicated processes for ordering parts, set strict qualification requirements, or introduce delays that make independent repairs less attractive. This kind of behavior has already been seen in other industries after similar laws were introduced. However, the new directive includes rules about fair access and fair pricing, which means companies cannot go too far without facing legal consequences. Consumer groups and repair organizations will be watching closely, and they now have the power to take action if manufacturers try to avoid the spirit of the LAW. At the same time, we may also see a more positive response from some brands. Instead of fighting independent repairers, certain companies could start working with them. For example, Porsche has already explored programs that allow independent workshops to become certified and gain access to official parts and information. This creates a middle ground where quality is maintained, but access is expanded. Other manufacturers might follow a similar path. turning independent repairers into partners instead of competitors. This approach could actually benefit both sides. Manufacturers can maintain a level of control and brand protection, while repairers gain the tools and support they need to offer high-quality services.